So Mitch, I wanted to start out with a recent LinkedIn post you had talking about marketing as a set of interconnected gears. I really enjoyed that. You go through talking about it and you ask a question, are your gears working in sync? I want to ask maybe a different question. What is the most important gear? Or what is that gear that you see as being so important to marketing? Marketers need more friends in sales, and I think the same is true for salespeople. That is, if they want to be more effective in their role. And that's why today's Friends episode is special, where I bring the two worlds together. Mitch is from the sales world, where he does tons of prospecting, sales development, and Timothy is from the marketing world, where he does copywriting, content creation, all of those fun things. In this, we chat all things sales, marketing, AI, and the one thing that they're most proud of towards the very end of the episode. If you want to go deeper on their insights, Mitch is from season 3, episode 8, and Timothy is from season 2, episode 6. Before we get into the rest of the episode, run the intro. This is episode 10 of Friends of On Marketing, recorded on February 21st, 2025. This is a show where I bring friends, past guests of On Marketing, back onto the show to talk anything. Emphasis on the anything. I hope it gets weird. Thank you for being here, and make sure to follow and support my friends. Their work is important, and so is yours. So reach out if you want to chat marketing, and maybe you'll get a future Friends episode. Before we get back to our conversation, let's get this out of the way. All opinions shared in this podcast are the individual views of the host and friends, guests, not those of their employers or associate organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional, marketing, or life guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. Thank you for being here.
If you think about the way connected gears work together, if one of them stops, I was thinking about it like a watch, like a mechanical watch. If you know how that's set up, the movement has a bunch of different gears that are all connected. And if one stops spinning, all the hands on the watch stop spinning because that mechanism can no longer work. And as I was thinking about marketing, I'm like, that's really similar to the way marketing works. So to the importance piece, I struggle to say one's more important than the other because if one stops, then the entire mechanism stops working. That being said, it really depends on the company's goals, right? If you are really focused on driving brand awareness this year in 2025, for example, then maybe that awareness gear is something that we just need to focus more on ensuring that it's running, ensuring that it has the right momentum to keep the rest of the mechanism going. And same goes for any other area of focus for a marketing organization. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. I sort of politically danced around it, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I like the watch example because, if the goal is to tell time, one of those not working will deplete the goal of telling time. Timothy, exactly. Are you thinking up there?
When I think about it, in working in mainly smaller marketing organizations, where we're very, very close to the sales team, very focused on revenue, we're not launching, massive brand campaigns. I mean, the number one thing you have to have is you have to have an influx of revenue. Because if you don't have the revenue, there's nothing to invest in marketing. And like marketing is ultimately, you do have to spend money to make money. Marketing needs an influx of revenue in order to function. And the minute that the revenue starts coming in, I mean, in my experience, that's when the cuts start happening. And then when the cuts start happening, then marketing isn't able to fulfill its goals. And then it just becomes a kind of a vicious cycle, and it becomes self-defeating at that point.
Which is probably why somewhat of that business plan, the actual how you make money with whatever you're doing is kind of important, because putting marketing onto something that has a really not great business model, and then it's hard to get that revenue at a rate that you can put it back in and such, or you get capital invested in, which then obviously you have to pay back.
I've had a couple of clients who I come in at the very early stages of business. They want to invest in marketing right away. But when we really get down to it, what they really need, they don't have a sales team. They need a sales team first. You kind of have to hire a sales team so that you have people who are out there, who are doing the direct prospecting, who are booking business, who are getting the revenue stream going. And then you build marketing on top of that to scale what's going on, right? If you try to do marketing before you do sales, you can do it if you have a low burn rate and a big wad of cash sitting around. Right? That's fine. And and some business models that may need to be the strategy, right?
Yeah.
But media businesses would be an example of that, where you really do need a long term. You're kind of in the red for a little while. I think, for instance, like Netflix, just as an example, they were in the red for like a decade before they started making money. And that's kind of a special case, but so you can do that, but I don't think most investors and most business founders want to do that.
I actually agree. And I guess a better way to illustrate the gears would be with a small business, for example. I mean, the example I'm using with all the different gears, this is a bigger business. It's more of an enterprise marketing motion. They've built all this stuff up, but you could even think about the sales team as that initial gear. Because I agree with you, whether it's founder led or whatever it is, however you're generating that initial revenue, has to happen for there to be marketing investment down the line. So you establish that initial gear. And then maybe the next one is just straight up lead gen, bottom funnel motion. We add another gear and that spins the mechanism and we can add over time. But the point is, all those have to be working together, Timothy,
Yes.
as you know, extremely painfully.
Yeah.
If the sales team isn't working well with the marketing team, there's a problem. And so,
Right, exactly. And then
yeah,
once you add the brand gear, for instance, that sort of reduces the friction that the sales team has, and they can operate more effectively. Mitch, you know that better than I do. But like, so yes, once you get going, obviously, all these things reinforce one another and make it easier for the whole, watch, if we're continuing with that analogy, to function. But there is the question of which one you go first. And yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page there.
Well, let's maybe go away from this, which I enjoy this brand revenue conversation. Just take it maybe to larger marketing. A lot has happened since I interviewed both of you in the world of marketing, in just the world in general. What's something that you've kind of slightly changed your mind on, or you're slightly thinking differently in marketing? Maybe it's AI, which I know is changing every other day. Does anything come to your mind of, hey, I'm kind of thinking differently on this that since a year, 2 years ago since we last communicated?
I'll leave AI on the table for later because I'm sure we're going to get into it because it's a marketing conversation. So, um, one thing I have started thinking about differently, I'm glad you said it that way because I haven't changed my mind. I've always known this is important, but I've just really bought into it being extremely important is ad creative quality. In the past, I just didn't give a lot of credit to it. I'm not a creative person. I don't execute the ad creative. So to me, it was if we get our targeting right and our budgets are right and our channels are right and we have all this stuff, then the creative, as long as it's okay, it's going to produce results and all of that. And the more that I've worked with larger marketing clients, the more I've seen if you can really produce a high quality creative, something that's extremely engaging, the difference in impression availability that comes from that, the difference in engagement, and ultimately the ROI on that ad is insanely different solely based on creative quality and your ability to hook an audience. And so I just didn't give enough credence to that in the past. And now that I've seen it more in action, it's definitely extremely important.
There are a number of factors that have contributed to that, right? Like one is just saturation of all the
Yeah.
marketing channels. So
Yeah.
you have to be that much better in order to get people's attention.
Totally.
That's one of them. AI certainly is playing into it. Like you said, we'll get into AI later, but as more companies probably, and I would assume in a cost reduction effort, are using AI to generate more creative. That just is going to create more saturation, so it's going to exacerbate the previous problem. But also, you're just going to have inhuman. I'm not going to speak in terms of quality because they're. It's such a complex to talk about like what's quality or not. But you're going to have content that's not going to, or content and creative that's not going to have just that human connection. It's going to be kind of flat in many cases. And so you're going to have not only more saturation, but you're going to have a saturation with stuff that doesn't necessarily work. And so those two things together, yeah, the quality of your creative and your content is going to be hugely differentiated. I think you're spot on with that, Mitch.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be that you could create a Facebook ad and it could have this crappy image on there with a call to action on the image and it would generate a click-through rate that yielded you these awesome results. And try that now with the saturation you're talking about and it's not going to go so well.
I'm going to actually, since Mitch offered a marketing opinion, I'm going to go ahead and offer a sales opinion.
Love it.
So we'll just keep that going. So one of the ones, and Mitch, this is going to come as no surprise, but I think that one of the big changes in how salespeople are valued in the organization, right? We kind of have this assumption that the prospecting person, the BDR, the guy on the front line or gal on the front line, is they're kind of the entry level person. They're going to be just going in and just slinging calls and sending cold emails and all that stuff, and it's a fairly easy job. And then the real value, right, is in the account executive who's actually going to come in and close it, right? Mitch and I, we've talked about this like ad nauseum. It seems like I think that as sales prospecting gets harder, and I've I've not done it as much as Mitch, but like I've had serious challenges with just getting, not only on the the business development side, like me going out and promoting my business, but also just as somebody who gets so many inbound, or sorry, as somebody who gets so many outbound messages on a daily basis, and that piles up, obviously over a week and a month. Um, the skill of having an outbound message, skill of having a good prospecting communication, like we said, with all the saturation, it's going to be that much harder to stand out, which means that prospectors, your BDRs, your SDRs, they're going to need more skill than typically what that particular role has attracted in the past. And as anyone who's done sales knows, like the more you qualify and the higher quality leads you bring in on the front end, the less skill you need to close on the back end, because you basically just somebody just needs to take the specs and run the work order and get the contract over, right? And that's not to diminish that closing, still will have required skill to do, but I think some of that is going to shift a little bit, uh, and yeah, especially as more and more people are using AI to generate prospecting emails, which they are doing. It's so obvious, like it's
Yeah.
if anyone here's what I say, as somebody who does like content and copy all day, every day, if you think that we can't tell that your AI generated blog or email or whatever, or social post or social media comment, people are doing this on LinkedIn, just commenting with like AI generated comments. Like, if you don't think we know that that's AI generated and can see through that, like, you're an idiot. Like, it's clear. Like, you can't get away with it.
I like how both of the points being very different in marketing and sales, they have these kind of, there's things outside of them, dynamics, forces that are making it change. So with creative, you could do it kind of just a stock photo maybe with basic stuff. Now you have to take that to the next level. Similarly, it seems with sales, like you have to now, with so much AI, with so much of these tools out there, you have to be a step ahead, a step better, it seems. I think that's interesting that things are constantly changing. It's probably the same with like Google Ads. Back in 2005, you could do a very different Google ad than you have to do today. And maybe even should we be doing Google Ads is even like the larger question. I want to jump. I just want to jump to AI. We've been talking about it. It's like the thing that's kind of under it.
Yeah.
Because Mitch, you recently had a post, and it was kind of about breaking through the noise. There's so much content out there. Like, how do you? And your answer was by choosing the right audience, and then you went through some of it, which I really enjoyed. But how are you thinking about AI? Because you had different comments on this podcast about AI in the early stages of it. I think it's somewhat got to be more validated. How do you see it fitting into marketing and sales? Let's open this conversation to all of it. How is it helping? Should we be focusing on efficiency? Should we be focusing on making things better? How should people be approaching AI if they haven't or they've been dabbling slightly in it?
It's interesting because I think it ties all to the saturation that Timothy's mentioning. That's kind of the problem in every single tech evolution, right? Is saturation just happens. It creates poorer quality amongst the entirety of whatever we're talking about. And I think AI is giving sales people and marketers the ability to drastically reduce the quality of their output. And so there's a discipline required, in my opinion, to go beyond that and produce things that are better while using AI. So I think efficiency for sure. If you're using AI for things like research or QA, or even bouncing ideas off of GPT-4 and using it as sort of an idea partner or someone to tango with, it is super helpful for that. But I think that just trusting it with your full output, it reduces the quality to the point where Timothy's saying you're an idiot if you don't think that people can tell that this is AI generated. You have to use it as a sparring partner, and I think that that's where it can be super helpful in both sales and marketing. It can be great with taking a creative brief in and ideating with the AI to formulate a more concrete version of what that campaign's ultimately going to look like. It can give you really strong prospecting ideas or be a really great way to do account research because it's crawling the internet. And so it's taking things from companies' S1s and their websites and new webinars that they've put out, product releases, all these things you can keep track of. And those are helpful on the marketing side too. So I think from a messaging creation standpoint, AI as a tool in your tool belt, which is a phrase that I've used with Timothy, maybe with you, I don't remember, Jordan, it's a tool in your tool belt. I don't think it can be the thing that's doing the ultimate production of whatever you're taking to market. Otherwise, you're going to be in some serious trouble.
This actually ties back to a question you asked Jordan about like what's something I've changed my mind on, and I how I think about AI has dramatically changed since our last conversation. And I'm totally stealing this from a podcast interview that Tim Ferriss did with Kevin Kelly from Wired magazine. And during their conversation, I forget which one actually like surfaced the insight. It probably Kevin Kelly. Uh, the We need to stop saying AI in the singular. It's not a singular thing. AIs, plural, as in there are various AI based tools and different AI models, and they all work for different functions, better or worse, right? Like Mitch said, Chat GPT, if you're using GPT-4, especially the most recent one I've been playing around with, um, it's excellent for getting, surface level kind of that 101, maybe even 102, getting people up to speed on like if I'm onboarding a new client and there are things about the nuances where they fit in the industry that I don't necessarily know about. It's a great way to just get up to speed and get information. There are other AIs that are way better at actual research. Perplexity is a tool I use all the time, of where you go and you ask a question, and not only do you get the answer, you don't really get a nice generated piece of a piece of writing, but you do get the links to the source material. The Google AI overview is like incredible for that. Like it is really, that tool is fantastic for simplifying the search user experience. For all of the disruption it's going to cause to SEO, and we're all, I think, aware of what's going on kind of in that area. From a user experience, like it's phenomenal. So, and I use it, and everybody's using it. If the kind of the data on no click search is to be believed, it really is, that's becoming the way people engage with search. So I think you have to look at different tools and how they function. And to Mitch's point, it's also about where you deploy it in the process. So like I can speak to the creative process, right? Deploying it on the generation of text side, which is what everybody got excited about when ChatGPT came out. That's actually not the use case. That's like we said, you're just going to generate stuff that everybody's going to see through and is just going to ignore, right? But on the back end, Mitch mentioned the research. That's certainly, that's one way I use it for helping content creators just think through their ideas and actually have some clarity, develop clarity to their thought. And that's a challenge too, because AI models also have their own built-in assumptions and biases, and so you have to be careful that like as it's guiding how you think about things, you're also kind of critically aware of what might be going into how the AI is thinking about these things. And so it's like it's a tango for sure. But like figuring out like where to put it in. I mean, I'm sure that AI models are going to revolutionize A/B testing and ad optimization for sure, because they do really well with just black and white numbers, and we can say, okay, this is doing better. Is it going to get to the point where it can analyze a piece of creative and identify like, okay, so here are two creatives that you've done, right, and they have 10 different things. Usually, I'll back up a second. Like with A/B testing, typically you change one element of the creative, you test against that, and you go with the one that wins, right? Can AI get to the point where you can have two different ad creatives, there's 10 variations among them, and the AI can figure out which of those 10 variations is the one that actually drove the improvement in, say, click-through rate or whatever it is? Like, is that a use case? I don't know if it may become one, but like stuff like that, I think, is where we might start to see more value. But I don't think it replaces the creative. It just, again, it makes us work far more efficiently and do our jobs better.
I want to double click on what you said. Sorry, Jordan, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's something I've been thinking about a ton is pluralizing the AIs. I listened to that interview with Kevin Kelly as well, and it's really interesting because if you listen to all the talk about AI in the market right now, a lot of it, not all of it, is by people that don't understand how AI works. And if you're not truly pluralizing AI, and you don't know how large language models work, and you don't know the different models that are out there and all the different tools, and it's just AI, which is what we hear at every event and is written in a lot of LinkedIn posts, then you're not fully grasping that this is getting very agentic. we are getting to a point where you can do multi-variable analysis on different marketing initiatives and stuff like that. We're getting to a point, hell, where there's AI out there that's going to be able to have sales conversations, let alone do the writing and everything like that. We're going to get to a point where they're having the conversations with the prospect. It's insane. And from a skill development perspective too, one of the things I do every morning is I do sales role plays with AI. It just gives me objections. It gives me like a ability to practice my scripting and everything like that. And that is such an unlock. And we're going to see agents that
Oh,
do
that's so cool.
specific training. And so you're going to have like an AI agent that could be a trainer for whatever role it is. I'm struggling to come up with a great example off the top of my head, but every single job role could have an agentic trainer that is just up leveling your skill at all times. And so the power behind this, if used correctly, is really huge, but we have to understand how it works because that allows us to understand how to use it most effectively. And something I've been thinking a lot about.
And in that vein, like there was an article that came out a couple of years ago. I would imagine things haven't changed that much. Like in B2B sales, the average buying unit is 10 people, which is insane how many stakeholders you have in an agreement. That's probably correlated to kind of economic challenges and you just need that much buy-in and sign off on stuff before you sell. But if you think about it as a B2B sales rep, you can have 10 you could have 10 optimized AI agents around those personas, and you can train instead of doing role plays and using human resources to do that. You can actually have agents that are trained on those particular personas and probably can do more effective job assuming those roles, and you can practice that. We haven't talked about that particular use case, Mitch. That's really awesome.
And Jordan, I don't mean to hog this topic, but on the ICP thing that you mentioned, Timothy, it's really interesting from a sales perspective, and you can extrapolate this into any other function in your org. From a sales perspective, a really cool thing to do is say, all right, here are the 4 people from this organization on my call. Here are their job titles. What are their most likely KPIs they're measured on? What's their day-to-day look like? And then I can tailor discovery questions to each of those people and multi-thread the conversation and allow for far more efficient research on that. And you can do that in any other role in your company. It just makes everything so much easier and more effective because then everyone's engaged in the conversation. My follow-ups are more well thought out. It allows me to more effectively close the deal. And so it's just super powerful.
I love, Mitch, how you touch on like knowing what's actually going on, and that enables us to use it better. Timothy, you said on the episode that we had, I don't even know how long ago, but you talked about generative AI being the same as like the word processor.
Yeah.
To the typewriter, and it's a tool, but the tool is only good as a person who knows how to use it. So that really is emphasizing what we're talking about here, is that if you don't know how to use it, you don't understand how LMs, you don't understand which one's best for which thing. So you're using Perplexity to write copy, and it's just like, this might not be coming out great. But so I'm assuming then we still believe that again, generative AI or AIs are only as important as a user that knows kind of how to use it, put it in the process. Because as Mitch, you're talking about, maybe I don't even do that planning beforehand. So if that's not part of my process, I can't even think then to use AI to create this sheet that I can quickly look at to be like, this is what their day-to-day looks like or potentially looks like.
Totally.
Well, I think we could probably talk about marketing AI forever, and we've already hit like 20 some minutes. So I kind of want to shift this a little bit to life, to kind of the things going on. Timothy, as someone who just became a father myself, I'm interested on how I don't run my own business, but I'm interested how you kind of balance all of it. You have a business, you have family, you have probably other things outside of that. What does that look like? Obviously, it's hard, challenging, but give me some insights.
Oh, it's pure chaos. Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. To give some advice on that, like first and foremost, like don't have any expectations that you're going to be able to balance it all. It will not happen. Certain things are going to take priority at different points. Day to day, week to week, and so just like be prepared for that. One of the it does help when you run your own business because then you can make the decisions around what's going to take priority or not. But like at the end of the day, you still have to fill client orders and you still have to generate revenue. So there is a hard limit there. I'm not a big believer in this. This idea of like purely flexible work. There are always going to be limitations and expectations. But so balls are going to get dropped. It's just, don't drop the same ball twice in a row. That's kind of, how I think of it. This one is kind of cliche, but it really is true. Intentionality. It's all about, figuring out, carving time, and having specific time set aside for the things that you prioritize. I mean, that's really it. I mean, it's kind of boring. It's all the unsexy stuff.
I like the expectation, not having an expectation of being able to balance. I think expectations have set me up for so much stress where if I
Yeah.
just dealt with the thing, it would be fine. But I kind of have so much more onto it. I
With
really like
kids
that.
too, like, yeah, you're gonna get into a rhythm, and then 6 months later, it's all gonna get thrown out the window because kids develop so quickly, and so what you have to do as a parent changes. So
In Mitch, you have a little different story. I believe you're married. You had
Yep.
a company with your wife. Now you're not doing that. Talk to me on kind of how maybe that influenced you to not keep doing it, or maybe eventually in the future you want to do it. Maybe you never want to go into business with your wife. That's been in my mind. My
Yeah.
wife's a graphic designer, so I'm always kind of considering that of pairing us. But I'd love to hear kind of your insights on how you balance, because marriage, as much as it's not a kid, it's still a thing that which needs attention to flourish and to be good. So how have you balanced all of that in the last few years?
So when we were running our business together, we did a really good job, and I don't think intentionally, to be honest. It's not something that we thought about at the very beginning and mapped out, but we did a really good job of just letting each other stay or staying in our own lanes, I guess is the way to put it, because she was running creative and client operations, and I was operating the business kind of from the big picture and running the sales stuff. And so she never came into that lane ever and suggested how maybe we should do things or told me I was doing anything wrong, and vice versa. I never went into the lane, thank God, of client creative or anything like that. It would have been a disaster. So, never stepping on each other's toes in that way really allowed us to function really well. And ending the business had nothing to do with working together. I'd absolutely go back into business with Kate. It's something that we talk about all the time. We just don't know what that's going to look like yet. And we're not trying to rush into it, because I think, as Timothy knows, having your own business, it's a commitment. It is a kid. It's another kid that you have. And so we're being very careful about what that looks like and what's going to get us fired up to wake up in the morning and do it all again. And so, to me, it's the most common question people ask: how do you work with your wife? Just stay in your own lane, make sure you have separate lanes, and then I think it can be done pretty easily. We never had much conflict over it.
And does that, for me, I'm thinking of respect. Like, why would you not go into someone's other's lane? Like, you have that respect, or what was,
Yeah.
like, is there another term maybe, or word that it's like, I believe in you, so I don't need to check your, like, math. I think I trust that the answer's there, or.
I think respect's probably the right word, because you respect other people's discipline for their craft. And so if you see every single day someone working to get better at what they're doing and they're doing a great job, then you have confidence in the fact that they're going to get that job done, and you don't need to get involved in what they're doing, and vice versa. I was working every single day to become a better salesperson and try to run our business more efficiently and increase our profit margin and all of that stuff. And so I think, even though we both made mistakes on each side of our business, the visualization of being able to see someone constantly getting better and trying to be a more impressive person in their craft gives you that respect. I like that word for it.
With a lot of things in the world changing, aside from just AI, if you're in America, there's political stuff, all of those things changing. What is something maybe more of like a personal outlook, a belief, a virtue, something that, again, not changed on, but maybe you're like focusing on it more, maybe focusing on something less that 5 years, 3 years ago, you were really focusing on, of trying to be curious, and now that's not something. Does anything come to your mind on personally a shift or a complete 180 on anything with so much changing and shifting in the world that we live in?
I think for me this year, and Timothy, you mentioned it being important and balancing everything you're trying to balance, or not even balance, whatever we want to call whatever word we want to use for that. But intentionality is something I'm super focused on this year, and I've always known it's important. Every single year, there are a couple books that I read, and I just read them over and over and over again, because I'm trying to become a version of what's written in that book. And Essentialism by Greg McKeown is one that I read every single year. And this year, I just noticed that I was distracted. I'm maybe not focused on the things that are producing 80% of my outputs all the time. And there we go. Perfect. Yep. It's something, it's one I read every single year, but this year I've like bought into it because I'm like, I need an essential intent, like he talks about in that book. I need to focus on the things that actually move the needle for me. And this year, just to start, I'm focusing on the clients that spend the most money. I'm not giving much energy to the clients that don't spend money. I'm instead of reading 100 books a year, I'm reading 30 and taking notes on the books and writing a pseudo book report on each of those so I actually remember what's a part of those. There's intentionality as a part of everything I'm trying to do this year. And so far, it's working. Could get thrown out the window, like Timothy said. Maybe things change in 3 weeks, but so far, that word has been extremely helpful for me this year.
It's gonna sound like I'm contradicting this, but I'm not.
Please.
But I the more I do creative work, the more I'm convinced that quality and quantity aren't diametrically opposed, and I don't think it actually is a trade-off. And not just quantity, but also speed, like speed of execution. I am increasingly finding just the more I do this, that the faster and more the faster I get content produced, and the greater volume with which I produce content, and not just for the business, but like also like broader, like because I do other creative stuff outside of the business itself, but like just the more that I'm doing, actually that has a positive impact on quality. Now, I think that I should put like some big asterisk in that. Like, if you are not accustomed to writing 10,000 words a day, we'll just put that as a thing, and you try to do it like all of a sudden, you're just going to dive in. Obviously, that's not going to work. It is a muscle that you have to work up to, right? But I've found that as my creative output has increased, slowly, maybe you're doing, usually I'm seem to be on a trajectory of like my daily count goes up by 1,000 words every year. It's sort of is kind of what it's looking like. Um, Not only is there no detrimental impact on quality, but actually I am finding that the quality of the work is better. And that may be because when you execute something fast, you don't have time to forget what came before. So the whole idea stays in your mind. There's actually like a principle in music composition, where beginning composers can only hold like a very simple musical idea in their head, whereas more advanced composers can actually have an entire symphony like conceptualized before they sit down to compose it. And I think that is something that applies to writing as well. Like just the less time you give yourself to forget stuff. And I found that too, like where I've started a project, like a more long-term project, and I've written notes a year ago. I go back and look at, and I have notes that are about a year ago, and then I'm writing something in the present day, and I look at back at my old notes. I go, actually, these were kind of as good, if not better, than the thing I'm writing
Yeah.
right now. Like it's kind of funny how that works. So I don't think it's a trade off like people think it does. I think it is a skill, and I think you have to build it just like anything else. But yeah, I think that's something that I'm kind of learning how to navigate that this year.
I just want to like, because Timothy, you said maybe we were contradicting there. I don't think we are. I think being intentional about where we're focusing our time and then going all in
Sure.
on
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
area. And that's what you're doing. You're really, really good at producing content. So you spend a bunch of time and a bunch of effort and a bunch of repetitions on creating content. And I think that's what I'm focusing on is how to get out of my email inbox and off of Slack and do the things more that are gonna make me more
Yeah.
money and make me better at my job, right? And so that's the intentionality piece that I think I'm focused on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Two thoughts, Timothy, based off what you're talking about. One, there's this whole experiment with a pottery class. One group could only make one pot for the entire 30 days. The other group had to make a pot every single day. And then at the end of the 30 days, who had a better pot? Clearly the people who just kept repetitioning it, to your point even. I think you can just like be more in flow state too, where you're not just like building something for 30 days and having that to be perfect. But second, I love how you touch on this, because with AI, I think sometimes I see the main argument being like, it's not about efficiency. Like we need to make things better. And I love that you're pointing out you can have both. Like you can have your cake and eat it. You can use it to speed up certain parts while also increasing the quality. Talk more on that, because I see so many people arguing one side or the other. It's all about efficiency, speed, create tons of stuff. And some people are like, don't use it at all. You need to think slow and write by yourself.
Right. Yeah.
How do you balance, or how do you think through that?
So a couple things. Like first of all, the writing is not just the writing. I'm going to just talk about writing, and you could just apply this to whatever skill. Like, the writing doesn't happen when you sit down to put words on the page. The writing happens before, during, and after. And so, like, if we're going to talk about AI accelerating, like the fact that AI can help you clarify your thoughts and get more information and get your list of, statistics and, make it easier to find hooks for articles and stuff like that. Like, and you as the creator make the decision of which of those ingredients you're going to use, but AI can kind of assemble them for you and give you the tools you need to do it. Like, that definitely accelerates it. I think one of the problems when we spend as writers so much time kind of just rewriting the same sentence over and over again, it becomes very easy to lose the idea that prompted us to write that sentence in the first place, and it takes on a life of its own. And I think when I think about speed of execution and quality, usually what prompts me to write most days is that I have a client and there's a deadline and they want to write about this thing, and they're going to pay me to do it. So, like, but in most, like, if you're just thinking about independently, like, for an idea to be so good that you're going to take time out of your day, that you're going to sit down and you're going to actually, like, generate something, you're going to spend an hour or two, like, fleshing it out, like, it's probably in a good enough state in the beginning. You just have to figure out, like, how to communicate it. And the more you iterate on that one idea, you sometimes can lose the very thing that prompted you to sit down and write it in the first place. So I think if we're talking about, and Mitch, you were hitting on, you talk about reps. Jordan, you hit it on just like different iterations, right? The iteration isn't an iteration of a single piece of content. The iteration comes in creating a new piece of content and then letting that one be 1% better than the one that came before. Like, that's, I think, where it comes in. So if that's the kind of the theory of creative iteration that I adopt, then it obviously makes sense. The more you produce, the more the higher quality it's going to be, with the caveat that you do have to have a little bit of a critical sense of, like, okay, what was working and what wasn't working. You always have to have feedback. I guess I should have put that in there. Like, if you're writing without feedback, and whether that feedback comes from a direct audience, like you're putting something on a blog or LinkedIn or YouTube or something like that, and you're just getting that direct feedback, whether it's from a client, if you're in more in a B2B situation like I am, like, in either case, you do have to have that feedback. So that's a critical point, and I think that may make or break the difference between whether or not you're actually getting better with each iteration.
The video is a component that I think about that a lot. Going on video does not make you better on video. Rewatching it, having people critique you, that's when you actually start to get better on video. And talking about writing, Timothy, I don't know who said it. Maybe Ann Hanley, one of those great thinkers on writing, talked about, like, just first ugly drafts, like, don't edit anything on the first run so you can get that idea fully out. And that resonates, because sometimes I don't get it out and I'm so anxious because I'm like, I'm going to lose this idea. I need to find some paper or, like, my phone to quickly download this because I have a lot of thoughts. So
I think
I like that.
psychologically you use different parts of your brain when you create versus edit, and so task switching slows down your efficiency too.
Look at that.
That's pretty smart stuff. Yeah, way above my pay grade. All right, as we wrap up this podcast, I'd love to ask a unique question. It's kind of around what you're most proud of, and maybe kind of the example here. So imagine if everything you've done was erased. So tomorrow you wake up and everything you've done, whether it's professional, whether it's open a door for someone, something kind, it's all gone. But then you get to choose one of those things you keep. So you only get one thing that you're still holding on to. So for me, it might be a period in which I was there for someone during their hardest time, which is unique because there's all other great work accomplishments that I would just let go to the side. Does anything pop out your whole life, but maybe just more recently, or your whole life, that kind of stands up of, like, I'm really proud of that. I would want that to be the thing that people think of me if everything else vanished?
I think for me, I'm going to use my whole life, and I'm going to qualify it a little bit. So I think the thing I'm most proud of is my marriage with Kate, if everything were to disappear. And the reason that is because I get to be married to my best friend. We have an awesome relationship. Every day is fun and enjoyable. And of course, there are hard things, but overall, it's a really great experience. And there will always be another job. There will always be more money to make. There will always be another business we can start, another book to read, another workout to do, whatever the hell we're into. There's always more of that. And so if all of that were to disappear and I just had my partnership with Kate to rebuild a foundation from, I think that's the foundational piece that keeps me moving in lockstep with the goals that I've set for myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a similar answer. I mean, who does anybody who has family say anything other than their family?
Yeah, it's
It's
hard
kind
not
of like, yeah, you're like,
to.
speaking of what you're talking about, like you're sleeping on the couch if that's not the answer.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll come at it from just a slightly different angle. Like all the same things. Like I'm also married to my best friend, and I genuinely like my kids are not just kids. Like they're wonderful little people that I love spending time with, and they're fantastic. Like so, like all of that, obviously. But one thing I would say is like one of the things, at least for me personally, I don't know if other people have this experience, but none of the things that I have done that have been counted as successful happened before I had Keegan or before I had my kids. Like I and it's you always look back and you go like what's the chicken or the egg situation, but like having a family did change something that was able to prompt everything else that I, have in life. So, it's that's not the most romantic way of looking at it, sure, but I think there is something to it that like, when you make the main thing, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that other things are going to happen, but it probably increases the likelihood that it will. So,
I love that because I know everybody's feed is curated by themselves, but I would say my feed isn't promoting that. My feed is not promoting find a family, get married, have kids. Like it's promoting all these other things that are almost attempts at which will give you that same fulfillment that you're both talking about. And I read this kind of devotional or just this thing it was titled like You Have What They Want. And it's about how every time a sports player, somebody wins something big, what do? They go to their family. They go to their kid. And essentially, Ryan Holiday was trying to say, you have what they want. Like, you don't need to get the big Stanley Cup to know this child is all that matters, this partner. So I love that because I would also agree, and I think it would be probably bad if someone didn't answer to your point. Now, I have interviewed people maybe without like wives or partners, so
Sure.
yeah, so it would be maybe more interesting, but I think at least if one person listening to this is buying into that belief of build a big empire and then find I don't know, I think Timothy, your point's so valid that my wife, Kate, funny enough, has enabled me to do so much more than I would have on my own, which is funny because marriage, kids are an inefficiency on the first sight. It's like you're telling me I'm going to get 2 hours of sleep. I'm going to, I can't go. And if there's a great opportunity with all these women, like I have to, like, it's an inefficiency, which then allows you to be better, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like an ironic thing I've found in my life.
yes, like also, are you going to be building an empire at 75? Maybe something
Right.
hard like that. But like when you're 75, 80, like what's your life going to look like? Like if you haven't. Yeah, I'm going to use just I mean, it's this practical, lifeless terminology, but like if you haven't indexed on the things that are going to improve your long-term quality of life, like.
Let's make the main thing the main thing. I love it. I think that's a great place to end this podcast. This was super fun. I feel like I was just kind of watching a conversation between two friends. So I appreciate you allowing me to just sit in on this conversation. This was fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. It was awesome.
Absolutely.
And this is the end of the podcast. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post it on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery. We need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.